This is Jay Paganelli from the Anchor Down Ultra. Welcome to the Cultra Trail Running Podcast, episode 277.
From the belly of the Beast Coast, Glastonbury, Connecticut, this is the Cultra Trail Running Podcast. We talk about all the fun shit that happens on the trails that most normal people don't care about. The language we use is f***ing explicit and raw like the trails we run on, so don't listen with your kids! Cultra is brought to you by our Patreons and supporters, and we are 112% listener supported, and support is good.
All right. Welcome, everybody, to Becky. What is on your face?
Who do I look like? Wait. Now, who do I look like?
Oh, King Tut? No, you look like Hannibal Lecter.
Hannibal Lecter. That's who I am.
Very good. Our guest tonight is Hannibal Lecter.
I wanted to find one of my little stuffed toys, and I didn't. So all I found was my head thing and my little head massager.
Oh, that thing. Yeah.
Naturally, you take a head massager and make yourself look like Hannibal Lecter, because why wouldn't you?
That's what one does. Well,
sorry, go on.
Welcome, everybody, to the Cultra Trail Running Podcast, or our special Anchor Down Cultra episode. See what I did there? Anchor Down Cultra. Okay. All right.
Oh, now I get it. I actually didn't at first. I was just kind of giving it a gratuitous head nod.
You were.
But now I got it. But
now I explained it for all of our. I think for our audience, we need to explain things, right? When you say in general, or is that, am I allowed to do that, right? Trash the audience a little bit, Anyway, sure. So thank you everyone for listening or hanging up or not listening from this point forward. My name is Art Byram, and I am joined today by the Cultra Crew, and we have evil Becky Burke.
Hello. We
have Fred Morolo.
I'm here.
And Celeste Fong a Ding Dong.
Good morning, kids.
All right. So, and today we also, as I guess if you were half awake and you know, it is a quiz, you already know that we have Jay Paganelli here from he's the RD at Anchor Down Ultra, and we're going to talk to him about everything Anchor Downish. So, I guess. So Jason, welcome.
Well, thank you. No, I'm super excited to be here, guys. And like you said, talk about everything Anchor Downish. This is cool. And I grew up in Connecticut, so this is like full circle for me. So very exciting to be on.
I didn't know you grew up in Connecticut. Where?
I keep it top secret, Celeste.
Yeah, that's one of the things that he's not going to talk about. So nobody can ask him. We're going to find out, though.
I grew up in Granby, Connecticut.
Oh, okay.
Oh, does that even count as Connecticut, Jason?
Hey, that totally counts. And let me just say, some of the best trail running at McLean Game Refuge. I ran cross country under Rebecca Lobo's father at Granby Memorial Middle School, and so those were my early running years. Were Granby cross country through McLean Game Refuge.
Oh, nice. Very good. That is I've run there, and it's nice, and I think Brian Rock Priori runs there on occasion too. So
yeah, it's a great spot, and we have a huge contingency at Anchor Down. Like I think one year it was like north of 25 people that come out of that neck of northern Connecticut, Simsbury, Avon, Granby. Yeah. So it's pretty cool to see the hometown represented.
Gotcha. I used to always track when for Boston, I would always see how many runners came from each town. Mm-hmm. And Glastonbury used to duke it out with West Hartford, and New Haven. So
for Connecticut, that's cool.
Yeah. Always had some fun with that. So, all right. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? Like, maybe start with so you said you grew up in Connecticut. Were you born in Connecticut actually, or?
Yeah, I was born in Hartford, grew up in Granby, Connecticut. My parents are still there. Mm-hmm. In the house I was born in, actually, they a little side tidbit. It was fun. They bought that house. They signed the paperwork about an hour before my mom went into labor. So they're still in that home. And so grew up in Granby and ran, the beginning of my running life started under Coach Dennis Lobo at Granby Middle School.
Mhm.
So if the name rings a last bell, not just because he's so awesome, but his daughter was the famous basketball star at UConn. So he was an amazing influence in running for me and ran under him and was like the back of the pack, slow, chubby, like should have been a football player, but Granby Memorial Middle School at that time didn't have football, so I ran cross country to try to stay fit.
Mm.
And he made me kind of fall in love with just running to run to move. Um, and yeah, and I don't know how much of a background you want, but maybe as it relates to running.
Well, no. So here's the thing: like the less it has to do with running, the more we like it. Because let's face it, you ask any one of any one of our siblings or parents or friends or neighbors or strangers on the street, and we all talk about running way too fucking much.
That's true.
I mean, we
Is
wouldn't
that
have a
possible?
podcast, right? Wouldn't you say that's? I don't know, I was going to ask you, Fred. Fred, I was going to ask you a question, but you started taking a sip there.
I don't talk about running at all.
That's right.
I never do. I've used it all up. It's been so many years. Or
You write.
You
Like,
really not talk about running at all?
You write about running, Fred. You're a freaking running
You
author.
literally wrote the book
You
about
did.
running.
I did write a book about a dude who runs, but that's I used it.
His name was Ed, not Fred.
That was not an Ed. It was some other name.
Yeah,
It had
what
nothing
was
to
his
do with
name?
me.
What was his name? I forgot.
You got to read the book.
I read
Oh.
it. I just
book.
forgot
Oh,
the
I'm only kidding.
name.
It's
Don't give it
Harmon.
away.
His name is
That's
Harmon.
it. Yes. Okay. All right.
So Fred, tell us, where did that name come from?
Harmon?
Yeah.
I'm not the guest here, but you're right. It is a story.
That was really. I'm like, why is he asking Fred a
I don't know.
question?
I had
actually is a
such
story,
a
but
fucking
you
day
really
today.
care?
So
You know
you don't
what
know
the
what's
name is?
going to happen here tonight.
So
I'm
I
still
had
waiting to
step-
hear like how Jason like devoured his twin in the womb or something like that, and we haven't even got there yet.
Do you have a
Okay.
twin?
He did, but that's why he was the potential football player because that's the secret that he didn't want. This is the big reveal.
The big reveal.
You guys got
He
down
told
to
you
the
not-
bottom of it.
Celeste, jump in there. Come on.
He told you not to tell. I can't believe you told.
Let
5
him off
minutes in
easy.
and you're spilling the secrets.
Oh my God.
I feel like I missed so much.
Oh,
right.
Beck, it's you can't miss. Just give it a shot.
It's
I know.
way too early
All
to
right.
be this far off the rails.
So I have a boring question though to ask. So are you from Rhode Island? I'm sure you probably already
No,
said it.
he just told us that he grew up in Granby.
He said 6 fucking times
I
he's from
thought you
Connecticut.
said
Beck.
Granby when I walked back, and I was like, no, because he's in Rhode Island, so it can't be. But I
he
had
is
to
in
step-
Rhode Island now.
Well, I'll tell you what, to answer that question, I'll get to my Rhode Island roots. So, because I call them roots. So, I grew up in Granby, Connecticut. I went to Stonehill College, which believe it or not,
Oh.
ties to running. So, I went to eventually. So, I went to Stonehill College in Easton, Massachusetts. And upon graduating there, shortly thereafter, met my wife, who's
Aw.
from Bristol, Rhode Island. And not only
Okay.
did I fall in love with her and happily got married and started a family, but happily got married to Rhode Island. I just fell in love with Rhode Island and coming to visit her and her family. And I grew up visiting Charlestown, Rhode Island, often when I was a kid. So I always kind of saw Rhode Island as like my vacation happy place when I was little. And when I would visit again later in life, I just realized I still loved the Ocean State. I felt like I was on vacation every single time I pulled into, whether it was the East Bay or Narragansett or Charlestown, Kingston. And I just would always be happy when I would be excited not only to see my wife, but to come down and see her family and see Rhode Island. So once we moved here, I felt I have a couple guys that work for me. I'm chuckling to myself because I have a couple guys that are passionate runners that are the same. One's dragged up to Boston by his wife to live in Boston because she works and loves in Boston, but he's got a Rhode Island tattoo because his heart is in, as a resident is in Rhode Island. So no, there's something amazing about the Ocean State. And just after a couple short years of living here, now it's been over a decade, but a couple short years of living here, I just felt like it was truly home.
Awesome.
I'm a native Rhode Islander too. I grew up in Westerly.
And
So,
Westerly is beautiful.
yes. Yeah. So whenever I'm home, it's, or I'm with my family, I probably pick up on it, but I realize how nobody uses their R's.
Yeah.
And it's just so funny because you forget. But yeah, and I love a Colt State Park. I mean, that's in high school we ran there a couple times, and then I just other races that I had done there. So when I had first heard about Anchor Down, and I think I did it like 7 years ago.
Mhm.
It was a while ago. I was like, oh my gosh, I can go back there to run. This is going to be so cool. So that was like that was so neat I would have never thought that I'd be running through that park, at like 1 a.m.
Well, it is such a I mean, if I'm being honest, it was part of the conversation my wife and I had when we were like figuring out where to settle. And we, obviously family was part of that dynamic, and where we wanted to go with our careers was part of that. But Cold State Park was part of that conversation. Here in the East Bay, especially, we're super lucky. Like I live in Warren, so I live one town away from Bristol, the home of Anchor Down. And I run out my door and I have the East Bay bike path and Colt State Park. We don't, and part of the DNA of Anchor Down, you could tell is like where we are, right? The East Bay. My background as a distance runner, as an ultra runner, is trail running. And we don't have that on the East Bay, and I'm not immune to that. I get in my car and I go to Boston for work a couple days a week, and I'm often stopping at Blue Hills or Borderland or kind of my go-to trail hotspots, because when I get home, I don't have that. But what we lack in that, we make up for in Shoreline, and it's a beautiful place to live. No matter where as my Portuguese father-in-law says, no matter where we look, we see water. And he's from the Azores, so I could relate to that. I feel far away from home when I don't see water.
Understood. So how far away are you from the North-South Trail?
The North-South Trail, I'm probably 35 minutes. My family and I camp regularly.
I mean, I'm going to call timeout here. So it's Rhode Island, so you're not that fucking far, right?
You can't be that far.
Pretty much across the whole state.
I need a passport to go visit it, Art.
Well,
Yeah.
actually, when
There
you
you
said
go.
30 minutes, I was like, wow, he lives far away from it, because Rhode Island, 30 minutes is,
Yeah.
you're getting pretty far across the state.
Yeah.
Warren's closer to like Horseneck Beach and stuff than it is to the North-South Trail, probably.
Yeah,
right?
we're right on the Swansea, especially now with what's going on with the bridge, right? And it's pretty far. We explored putting a race on there, me and my crew, for a while, and just couldn't kind of get it to work. But I've run it regularly, pieces of it. 3 or 4 years ago, two of my staff and I were entertaining the idea of trying to break the record on it, the unsupported record, because Ben Nephew's supported record would be very unattainable for me.
So you'd be coming after me then. At one point, I had the FKT for unsupported North-South.
Oh, forget it. That's the off the record.
Yeah.
You can't talk about that. I didn't know that. I'm
Forget
broken
about
now,
Ben
so
Nephew.
Your record is safe, Art.
Okay.
Meeting
yeah,
with Art Byram is
I think
just...
somebody already kicked it. I mean, it wouldn't be that hard. I didn't have hype on nitramia. I think I had, actually I did, but I think I got it through osmosis. So, because it was just so wet.
When in the year did you do it?
I did it in the springtime. But it snowed the night before. So it was like
Was this during COVID that you did it? Yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
Like the first year.
I haven't done North-South yet. The whole thing.
It's a great
again, to end.
trail. It is a wonderful trail. I mean, I want to do that again. So
Isn't it like
do it.
70 something miles?
It's
like 72, I think. Like that's
That'd be good training for the cut.
It is. We're talking about doing the Riot. Is the Rhode Island Ultra Traverse, the Riot. So
I got it. I was like, what does the O stand for? But now I got it.
Yes. Yeah. It's a U.
The O stands for you.
It is. It's all about you, Beck. So
was Anchor Down, was that the first ultra that you put on, or first race that you put on, or had you put on a bunch before that?
No, I'm fortunate in that. So I guess my whole kind of story leads me to my background is race directing. So I've been professionally race directing now for going on, I think we're getting close to 15 years, full time for most of that. So it's what I do. It's what I think about, late at night when I can't sleep and I'm stressed about work. I'm stressing about, races and um, Anchor Down was what I would argue was the first like artistic event. And the only what I mean by that is like there's in race directing, there's two things you have to worry about. There's being a good race director to your runners. And as a runner, that's priority number one, right? And then there's the business of race directing. There's the building enough of a financial platform to deliver on the promises for sponsors to cities, towns, police departments. And quite frankly, as a race grows more successful, all of the so many parties that see more money being driven into an event in one day and put their hand out. And some of that's good and some of that's bad, right? Like some of it's good. A charity says, well, our goal is this. Some of it's bad. Some of it's just leverage, right? A property has leverage over you because you're 1 mile of your 18-mile course. And they go, well, we know you can't do this without us. So pay up. Anchor Down came late enough in my career that we had so many races that were handling the business side of what we were doing, trying to grow the running community. That's sort of so. My company is True North Running Company, and my mission statement is we just want to grow running. And there's a whole background of that. We started as a coaching service because I wanted to grow running, and then we shifted into race directing full time. I think in 2000. I don't know, 2015, maybe about 10 years ago, we went full-time races only, events only. And Anchor Down, we had all these other events that were providing us resources, right? So we had relationships with sponsors. We had all of the equipment we could ever imagine. We have a giant warehouse filled with race equipment. Everything we could dream up, we have. We own everything that other race directors have to rent. So basically, what I was figuring out, I have all these events that I'm passionate about. Like every one is different, right? We have beer events and I'm a beer drinker and right, like we have these amazing fun partnerships and things that are like great for the running community that bring in recreational runners, which is a big mission statement of mine. We have one event that brings in 44% over 1,000 people every single year, new to the sport every single year, which we're really proud of. But none of them were like my vision for an authentic old school ultra, which was always my favorite ultra. And to be candid with you, I look back in the past and, in my little curio cabinet that my wife got me over there, there's a bunch of mementos from the around the Lake 24 hour in Somerville.
In I'm sorry, in Wakefield.
Yeah. I'm
Yeah.
sorry, not Somerville. Thank you. By the Somerville Roadrunners.
Correct. Yes. Yeah. That was my first 100.
Hey, me too.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
Excellent.
You too.
Yeah. So that
good.
To me, that was like there was something about that race that struck a chord with me, and it was not a fancy race. It didn't have tons of support. Art, right?
I gotta tell you a story on this. So I gotta interrupt. I mean, I know you're the guest, but fuck it, right?
Yeah.
So
Art never interrupts. So this is a rarity.
So I do the race, and that's I could talk for 3 hours about that. Okay, but I wake up the next morning and of course, like you can't walk after doing your first 24-hour run. Right. So I'm like,
know what you're talking about.
Hobbled walking out of the front of the hotel. And there's this little wooden ramp that was built and I'm walking out that. And then all of a sudden, I see this guy chasing this other guy across the parking lot with a baseball bat. A guy jumps into his car and the car drives right by him. The guy swings the bat and hits the car because somebody was collecting some kind of a debt or something like that. And the car fishtails out of the parking lot. And I was so wrecked that there was no chance I couldn't have moved a half a step aside to not get hit by a car. So I was like, whatever's going to happen is going to happen. So when you say, it's not a fancy race. Yeah. There were some things about,
it wasn't at the Lord Wakefield, right?
It was, yes, of course it was.
That race like you say, there was, and I mean no insult to anybody, the Somerville Roadrunners listening, like that race became part of my growth as a runner. Like it was special to
Yeah.
me, and there was nothing about it. But the thing that I loved about it was that it was reminiscent of the old school running community. It was a bunch of people that thought that race was different, that
Mm.
it should exist, that it should give people that wanted to test themselves against 24 hours on a
Hmm.
very hot weekend, on a
Mm.
very, like, quite frankly, unsexy course, right? Just like run around the lake as far as you can in the next 24 hours
Yep.
and,
Like a
dodge
5K
the
loop or
pedestrians in the
something.
morning
Hmm.
and do as much as you can. And when you finish, just maybe, we'll give you my year, I have it hanging downstairs in my living room, a tile.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, I regret to this day because I would have talked to the RD now and been like, a buckle, a buckle. Yeah, you got one
There's
too.
there's my tile.
There you go.
Is that like a snail?
No, it's like around the lake. I think it's the artists. Each
Oh, I
one,
thought those
everybody,
were eyeballs and that was like a little snail, like with the little
they
lines
are
around it.
Beck. Actually, no.
Not that I
No,
think of it.
everybody got their own unique tile, and I think this one I always thought it was kind of like a circle going around a lake, like it goes
Or
in
snail.
circles, or a snail going around the lake, which would have been more appropriate. So,
Yeah.
oh,
Well, that race to me was like special because to me, it was like honest, right? Like a lot of the races now, you as a run, and I don't know if you guys feel this way, but I feel this way as a runner. I did before I got into RDing, and now that I'm on the RD side, I see it this way a lot, but I have a lens of an RD. I feel sold, right? Like I'm seeing races and I'm feeling advertised to. And that race, there was nothing to advertise. It was honest. It was like, show up if you want, do something really difficult if you want. And every year I'd show up and it was not easy for me. I was much faster in my adult life than I was in Grantby Memorial Middle School. But for me, finishing a sub 24-hour 100 was magic. Like
mm,
that was the definition of success for me, very much like a road runner might say, well, I want to qualify for and run Boston, or I want to finish a first marathon. Then I'm a runner, right? For
sure.
me, being an ultra runner, at my definition of success was I just want a sub 24-hour 100, and I don't care how long it'll take me to get there. And I believe I'd have to check, but I believe it took me 5 consecutive tries at the Around the Lake to get it. So if you
Mm.
beat me in under 5, Art, you kicked my butt.
I only did it. I was one and done.
So very, thank you. There you go.
I was
It
I
took me
was
5, and that was the DNA of Anchor Down because when our business grew and we had more influence in running and we had a larger reach in the New England community, we had resources. I didn't have to. All I got to think about in that year when we launched it was I just want, I'm supporting all these charities because we do a lot of consulting work for charities, how to make their events more profitable, how we make them more runner centric, how we bring new running blood into their events,
Mhm.
how we grow their profitability long term, how we increase their connection to the running community. Like that's my work. But I was like, well, I'm getting all my work in running is getting disconnected to what I want to do, which quite frankly, the most fun thing to do is just put on events that I think are complete badass for the running community.
Right
And
on.
the Around the Lake 24-hour hadn't died yet. And I just wanted to do something in Rhode Island. I'm like, how do we do it? How do we showcase? How do we do ultra running in Rhode Island? We don't have trails, we don't have mountains. And to answer your question, Rebecca, in a very long-winded way, I think you go by Becky, sorry.
Oh, either one.
That was Anchor Down. Anchor
Buttercup.
Down was like, rules aside, I don't care about, I want to design an event that doesn't need sponsorship, that showcases Rhode Island, that celebrates Rhode Island in the ultra running community because we had it, but on a limited basis, in a premier location. And it took us a couple years. We had to go to the DEM and convince them to open a state park for 24 hours and talk about that. But that's Anchor Down. It's like it's running without the economy of race directing. So to me, it was like ultra running in its purest form. And you guys know, and Celeste, you're there every damn year. You know,
Since the
right? Like,
first year. Yep.
Yep. So it's part of my speech, right? It's like you guys, if you guys want more sponsorship and more fanfare, and pick another ultra, because once you have all that come into a race, success is a double-edged sword in race directing. You have all this activity come into a race, and then the race director owes everybody, and he's caught in the middle, right? The runners expect this perfection, which they deserve, and then the sponsors expect return on their investment, and then you're indebted. But the cool thing about Anchor Down is it's one of the few races we're indebted to no one. Like every year, our current title sponsor, which is Hoka, we set the rules out in front of them and put it in a proposal. And I'm like, this is old school ultra running. We're never gonna, fail to the liability police and be like, no, it's going to be on a cooler weekend. We're going to own our challenges. We're going to call it unapologetically difficult. Like we are going to be what ultra running used to be. And there are still those races, right? We have our Badwaters and our Western States, but you guys know the races. You know the races now that start to get more corporate influence and they start to change. Mm-hmm. And my promise is that will never be Anchor Down. That's why we kind of started Anchor Down, and we stick to that every year and remind ourselves like that's why we did it. We did it to be the race that we want to see the most. And I have 8 people on my crew, and we look around at each other every year and we go, are we cheating that in any way? Is there anything we could do to improve that? But at the end of the day, it's like, what can we do that we would want if we were one of the 230 people on the starting line?
Gotcha. So almost like, and tell me if this is right. So almost like the kind of race that a running club would put on, right? Like
very much so.
They're not in it to to break the bank on it. It's about like, yeah, let's do some cool shit. I think Laz does a lot of that, right? Like he just finds something that kind of tickles him the right way and then does it. So
well, yeah, because when you think about it, Laz is slave to no one, right? Like that's one reason I think runners really respect him, is that they see the runner that he was at one point, and I think he's trying still to be. I could relate to that. And he just, I think he gets that success is being authentic above and beyond anything else. And the other thing that makes him powerful is that it's just Laz, right? Yes. Like running club races are the best, right? Like we know that especially in our community, right? Like you guys know that you have an amazing club there in Connecticut. In Massachusetts, before I moved down, I was at so many TARC events. Like those are the grassroots of the running community. Those feed the blood of the running community. But at the end of the day, those races are different because they have committees. They have 10 personalities that all have to approve of decisions, that have their hand on the budgets, that can't do anything creative because they can't get a majority. There's tricky politics in those races too. It's why usually they're lower budget and easier to get into for a newer runner, right? Like there's a place in the running community, an incredibly important place for all those races. But there's also something really cool when somebody just has a really awesome idea and says, I don't care how it does. 50 people could show up. First year at Anchor Down, I think we had 80 people. Celeste, you were there in the first year?
Yeah.
Were you there in 2015?
Yes, I was.
Yeah. So,
I've done
2016.
Yeah. And it was only 2 miles the first year.
It was different course.
The course was different. Yep. Yeah. It was my first marathon distance. Yep.
So Jason,
and it's been my favorite race since because it's
no more questions.
It's all
I want to ask a question.
No, I have to say something while we're on topic before we go like more off topic. So Jason, what you just described is our podcast. That's what Cultra is. We don't have sponsors. We could certainly, I have people call up and want to sponsor. I got Hoka, definitely Hoka. Athletic Greens, probably like.
If Hoka is trying to sponsor us, I would kill you if that meant I was not getting free shoes. There's never going to be a time that I'm going to wear Hokas because they're too expensive. So if you are keeping me from free Hokas, very upset with you.
Okay.
Listen,
right.
Hoka.
Wait, I wear ons though. Can we get free ons?
We do have. Okay, some of the sponsors that we have, like, Canadian Trail Fishing Magazine, they're pretty good. Trail Spanx, Booger Nutrition,
Desitin,
Desitin, we've kind of adopted.
No,
we sponsor them. Oh, Fessitin. Yeah, it's a
Fessitin.
little known
Yes.
competitor of Desitin.
Yes.
So, but yeah, that's what we're all about here. Is that we could certainly do all that, but like you said, when you do that, then you know what? Then people expect you to edit your show, and then especially like I don't know, like if sometimes when you have sponsors and your business is just talking about running, it's like it's just always sounds disingenuous to me somehow, even if they're the best, even if they are their good friends and stuff like that. I don't know. I don't think that would, for us, I don't think it would add anything to the, to what we do.
Well, I could totally relate.
Nice, Fred.
One thing, oh.
Fred, you're muted there, just so you know.
One thing I could, at True North, and this is for our races across the board, but Anchor Down's obviously the most extreme in the way we conduct ourselves in the way we conduct the business of it, which is making sure that we could pay the crew that's there working 30 hours straight and blah, blah, blah. But we sell out a sponsorship for every single race we put on because number one, our sponsorships are silly cheap because I don't want to be, if I'm selling sponsorships, I'm not planning for a race. And what do I owe the runners? I don't owe the runners selling sponsorships. I owe the runners putting on a better race. So our sponsorships come to us. Our biggest event, our title sponsor has been with us for over 10 years, actually 12. So for me, I think and I don't want to get off on the business side of running right now, but the business.
Well, I think it's an important thing. It's such a current event. And maybe we could even get into that a little bit.
Yeah, happy to. I mean, don't get me, make me step off my soapbox if I get on it too much. But running is influenced by big business now more than ever, and it's sorting itself out. But it's and I think it will sort itself out because at the end of the day, there's not that much money there's very small budgets around races. Races are I don't know if you guys subscribe. I got my New England Runner calendar right here, right?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
And this gets thinner and thinner every single year. You look through this and it's thinner and thinner every single year. Days that used to have 30 races on it now have 4. So the businesses that are involved not because of the money that goes around. Okay. The businesses that are involved because of the data, right? What do you do every single time you sign up for a road race? You give your cell phone number now, your email address, right? Your address, everything. The big businesses that are involved now are involved because of that, because essentially if they're buying the correct races, they're acquiring data.
Oh, no shit.
Huh. Yeah. And
never
that's
even thought of that.
I never did either, but I'll tell you this. I made the mistake. I had a business trip in Vegas and the Rock and Roll Vegas something 5K for $136. My wife and I signed up for it and it fucking rained. and it was just like that, but they're still selling me pictures and trying to, really just like relentless, the marketing machine for that. So it is.
Well, I can tell you it's happening more and more. It's happening a ton in New England. I've been, I put on a lot of races and I've been taken out for a fancy meal now and again to talk about some sort of opportunity. And we laugh at it every time because it's never runner centric. It's never like, we're going to help you. And by the way, that's not for Anchor Down. That's for other races.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, the races need to stay. And I know this is so cliche, but they need to stay locally owned and by runners and for runners. They're either owned by a man or woman who's passionate about that, who says, I'm going to risk major money and I'm going to take $20,000 and I'm going to put up a race because I think it's good for my running community. It takes that, or it takes a running club to do the same. And there's pros and cons of both. But it takes people from within the running company or the running community. And then it takes people to say, when the financials get scary or the logistics get scary, it takes people to hold on to it. And that's what happens is you see, so say it's Jay Paganelli saying, I think there's a race that's going to be amazing and I want to do it. I'm so passionate about it because I want to toe the line at this race, which is what Anchor Down is, right? Like Celeste, I watch you guys every damn year and I'm like, oh God, I want to run. Like this stinks, right?
Yeah.
But it takes somebody like that who's like, no matter how bad this gets, I'm going to solve the problem. If the race gets so popular, I'm going to make sure the budget allows me to invest in the logistical solution for that problem. Or the race is financially successful enough that I don't have those concerns. I only have, you basically need to be financially successful enough to pay away your logistical concerns, or logistically simple enough to not have financial concerns. Yes. And that's what a lot of first-time race directors get, and they panic. And what do? They get an out by a big business who wants their data. And that's why the trend right now is races that are succeeding are selling because they either have a financial problem or a logistics problem.
But also now the other part that comes into this, and this is like my understanding of it, and I'm sure you know a lot more about it than I do, but the amount what I heard, and I think I heard it on Somewhere Called Play, like David Roche's podcast. He mentioned the fact that this whole Ironman, that whole Whistler thing, he mentioned the amount of capital that got dumped to Ironman. And when you do that, when it's not just like the local sports store, but when you have people investing capital into these things, not as a casual investment, but dump money on you and say, okay, spend this. They're going out and like, okay, the only way to do that is huge growth, right? So they're going to just go out and try to buy everything they can because they can't possibly get that organic that fast, right? I mean, it's difficult to get your permit, to do that whole thing without having, it's much easier to come in and, kind of control your markets that way. So it seemed like they were just forced almost to spend this money because the way that my observation is they're predatory. I mean, that's no secret. Ironman's been doing that for a long time, buying race or offering to buy events, giving them lowball offers, having them reject it, then opening up an event nearby that's in conflict with their time frame, getting them to stealing people with the Ironman name, and then coming back lowballing the same company that they originally offered to, and then closing those events and raising the prices at their other ones.
They do, and it's definitely, I'd like to think in a perfect world, I'd like to think it sorts itself out. Because, and I, especially with what I do for a living, I maybe that's the thing though. I won't say, like, I won't name the races that you probably think of the same, but there are definitely races in the Northeast that were I would return to 5, 6, 7 years in a row with my family. Ultras that were just, they were part of like my habit of like every single year being a part of the trail running community, testing myself. They became like Anchor Down is for many, like my place, my community, my club. I'd see the same faces, give the same high fives on the starting line each year. We make jokes about the things that went awry the previous year, and we say go, and like it was like a culture, right? It was a culture that I was part of, and those races are not owned or managed by the same people anymore. And with that, the culture dies, and you see it. You see it the first year an event sells, and so one thing I remind Anchor Down people at the starting line every year is I try to make note of the fact that we have certain rules. We're one sponsor. I've promised that since day one. We are one sponsor, and if somebody doesn't align with us, we are zero sponsor. And there's no expo, because even though an expo is great and you get free stuff and you get a goodie bag, it's not worth what it does to the culture that you are now a part of, the family you are now a part of. And there are some that's different, right? Like you go to a big city marathon, of course that's different. Of course you're expecting a bigger organization to do that. They have to shut down. I mean, a big city marathon has a $120,000 police bill. It takes 1,000 runners just to pay the police who should be paid to show up and shut down those streets. That's a different thing. But your grassroots, organic, small community running, and in my opinion, the vast majority of ultra and trail running should be by runners and for runners. It shouldn't sell out. It doesn't need to sell out, right? You have, Celeste is
Yeah. Right. I mean,
reaching into her
that's
pocket every year to sign up for Anchor Down. Anchor Down's not cheap. I'm not saying it's cheap. It's an investment. And with that investment, we have a budget to put on an amazing event, take care of the people that put it on, and keep it true to what it is and say no to the business influence.
it doesn't, I mean, I think you know, my impression of it, and again, I haven't been there. Okay. It's been on my list, but it just never happened for me. Is that it's not, there are certain races that you just feel like you're getting ripped off. And it's like, yeah, I don't know. I'm going to go and do this. And I know it's a lot of money, but like, I don't
And when
know.
you think about it, a race shouldn't feel like I think this as a runner and a race director. When you're signing up for a race, it shouldn't be like you're at a store buying a product. You're buying
Yeah.
into a competition. What you are buying into is somebody's job should be to keep that competition authentic to what it is, to tell you what like Anchor Down, the promise is unapologetically difficult, hottest weekend of the year, no holds bar. You might go home in an ambulance. Like, the drill, right?
The grass hill is stupid.
Yeah. But right, like, and my job is to keep it that way, right? Like you talk to, the winner every single year, Chris Cappellini's become over the years a very close personal friend of mine. We have the same joke every year. He'll text me, be like, "Who am I against this year?" And I go, "I'll let you know when it goes public in 6 weeks," right? Like my job is to keep.
And the answer's always nobody.
Yeah, exactly. And he knows, but he still jabs at me. Like my job is to keep it so it is like as old school as ultras can still be. And that's my job. That's what you're buying as a runner. Not just old school, but you're buying a competition. And that's what it used to be 20 years ago. You were buying into a competition, and it might be a $5 neighborhood competition where you might get a t-shirt, and that was that. Or you might be buying into the Boston Marathon, and the carpet is laid out for you to do a once in a lifetime performance or something in the middle. But it's now businesses are making it more of a product, not a competition, and the runners are the victims.
Well, so let me ask you about
you're
that.
buying into a community. It's not just the competition to me. It's the community that's, for me personally, it's the community of the race, right? So I'm not into like big races. It's just me. I don't like them.
Yeah.
So like when I go to like an Anchor Down or a Hamster Wheel or Notchview, like my favorite races, it's community. And it, like you said, there's a lot of repeats. You're seeing the same people. It's, you can count on it. You have, like I know exactly what I'm getting myself into. I know I'm going to be swearing at you for 24 hours. Like I know what's going to happen, but that's what I'm paying for too. Right.
Yeah.
Like,
well, you have Bill. Bill's a perfect example, right? You bring up Bill at Hamster Wheel. Bill is a perfect example.
yes.
That's why Bill and I connected on the qualification standard for Anchor Down. Cause it's like, I didn't want to just hand that to any race, right? Like that needs to be somebody like Bill's competition is completely authentic, right? Like
Yes.
he could have that race without him and Darby doing like 20 hours of cooking and investing in freezers in their garage. Like he could have that, but that exactly. And he does that. And that makes that race like that race. And
right.
a business, somebody who is in it, not for the runners, would never do that. You could tell right. And that's why his race continues to grow because
Right.
it's completely authentic by runners for runners.
Can I ask
Hey,
you?
speaking. Go ahead, Beck.
Oh, well, I was just going to ask you. I think when I did that race in 2016, there was three things that were appealing. Of course, one was that it was Rhode Island, and that's where I grew up, and so I'm like, oh, great. The venue I knew was beautiful, so I'm like, oh my gosh, I can be in this park for I did the 6 hour, but at the time, like we stayed in a tent and stuff overnight. And the other thing was that the race started, and I don't know if it still does, but the 6 hours started at 7 p.m. and ended at 1 a.m. And I thought that was so neat because that was the first time I did a race that started at such a different time. And so I'm just curious, like what was it that kind of brought you to do that kind of a time and to, yeah.
Sure.
I'll take this. I'll take this answer here.
Oh,
He likes people to suffer.
I'm thinking the 7:00 start was due to Wakefield.
You know what? In fairness to Wakefield, it was probably 50% that. It was 50% inspiration from what I thought their model was and what I loved about that model. And the fact that, quite frankly, in New England, there's nothing like it. And number two, to me, it was the heart, like at the time when we launched Anchor Down, Robert, I don't know if you guys know Robert Jackman. I think he's a Tuesday Night Turtle. For me on the East Bay, he's on the other side of Rhode Island, so we don't connect very much. But every once in a while, I would see he was an ultra runner I respected and an RD I respected in my early days as an RD. He used to put on the Rhode Island 6-hour, and I would run that every single year, and that was the RRCA championship every single year. And so there was some influence in that one too, because that was sort of unapologetic, 6 hours on pavement in, I think, Warwick City Park is the name. And we didn't want to step on the toes of that. We wanted to, I think I actually, texted or exchanged Facebook messages with Rob, because we're just like, we're trying to do something that we have a vision for. But, and as a runner, another RD belief I have is, as a runner, I know if I'm filling a niche or not. If I'm putting on just another, and as an RD, it happens to me all the time. I won't even get into that. But like, we have a successful event that sells out, and the next year, within 2 weekends, 3 weekends of that race, big corporate entities come in, and all of a sudden there's 3 of the same race. And what they don't realize is that nobody's going to win. Nobody's going to win. They're not going to steal all our runners, and they're just going to put on events that putter along. And our event's going to get hurt, and the runners are going to hurt, because now the budgets of all 4 are going to putter, right? So as a race director and as a runner, I could look out in the community and I go, that's not unique. What are you doing? You're trying to steal somebody else's niche. And that's not what we were trying to do with Anchor Down. Anchor Down, Rhode Island arguably did not have, or has never had, a lot of ultras. We had the Nifty 50 a long, long time ago, before my day. And we had Robert. Yeah, was that yours, Fred?
I did it in 06. I did it in 06.
Wow. And do you remember what the last year was?
It did not last that long after that. At my year, it had a marathon and the 50, and it probably went to like 08 or something. It really wasn't that long afterwards.
Okay. Well, what we were trying to do was do something that would stand the test of time, that people would see and go, wow, that's different. And again, the budget was not the consideration, right? Because if we had, like Celeste's first year, we had 80 people. And I don't remember, but I'm pretty sure we either lost our shirt or came close to losing our shirt. But we had the cushion of the rest of what we're involved in the running community to just make it blend in with a greater budget. So I was like, you know what? This is if I'm true to myself as a runner, this is what I want to RD. This is my dream event, and we're just going to go with it. And if people dig it, great. And if not, it's going to be sort of our give back. And it's allowed us to sort of unapologetically let it evolve the way we think the runners want it to evolve. So yeah, the 7 p.m. start was largely wanting to make it different than Rob Jackman's race, which was a 6-hour morning start. And the heat was a big part of Anchor Down. And to be honest with you, I think the heat at night at Anchor Down is, and you might know this, Rebecca, from your experience, or Celeste, you know it from yours. It's I think the heat at Anchor Down at night is harder than the heat during the day, because it's that 100% humidity that always drops to like 60% humidity at 9 a.m. So it's a trade-off. So and those trails at night are, I joke about Anchor Down all the time, because I'll be out there running. I live one town away, so I'll pick up my son at school and go for a run in Cultra Park, and I'll run those trails, and I'll see a casual jogger with like a stroller. It's like a friendly forest trail, except at 7:00 in August, and it's like,
Yeah.
No, it's a deceptive course.
Yeah,
I always say that, like, Anchor Down is a deceptive race, because logically it's easy, right? Like, there's not a lot of elevation, that's not technical,
So could we kind of explain to people, because there's a lot of people, all of our Colorado listeners.
okay.
The
course.
Yeah, they're like, I think that Rhode Island is somewhere up fucking by New York somewhere. I don't really know, but like could be New York. It's right next to New York or DC. So,
Rhode Island is south of Massachusetts, right next to pinned between Connecticut and Massachusetts.
Mhm.
We are a very small state, and I'm proud to say that Warren, my little town, is the smallest town in the smallest state. So if I want to
I
go
didn't know
for
that.
yeah, if I want to go for a 2 mile run, I have to run through my town twice.
You got to do laps.
So it's a
Oh.
funny place to have an RD of a big Rhode Island Ultra. But the anchor down is in Bristol, Rhode Island, which is on the East Bay. So it's in the smallest little spin-off of Rhode Island, otherwise known as like the redheaded stepchild of Massachusetts. But we're proudly Rhode Island.
Gotcha.
And it is the structure of anchor down, for those not familiar with it, it is 24 hours, 6, 12, or 24 hours, the premier events, the 24 hours, held strategically on the hottest weekend of the year, on a course that is half pavement and half, we'll call it technical single track. And we sort of do that to keep we wanted to make the hardest ultra we could in Rhode Island, which obviously Rhode Island is it's the most congested state in the union, right? So it's
Oh, wait, what?
yeah, it's per capita. It is the most people per square mile in the union. I think I'm getting that right because it never made sense
I've
to me.
heard that too.
It's like 3 square miles and there's like 7 people.
Right.
So,
Pretty much.
I'm sorry. Shut up, Art. Really? Come on. Don't like. Why do you gotta
Leave
do
us
that?
Rhode Islanders alone, Art. Stop
I
teasing
know.
us,
Just,
please.
just you
You're
Glastonbury
just jealous.
kids.
You want to be like us.
You people from the
But yeah,
belly
we
of the
wanted
East
to,
Coast.
our goal is to showcase Rhode Island, right? We don't have mountains, we don't have single track. We have like this beautiful slice of land, and we have a little single track that's on the ocean, and we have pavement that's on the ocean, and the ocean's lapping your feet the entire time. That's Rhode Island, right?
That
We
is
don't want to
cool.
pretend we weren't what we are. So that's what Anchor Down is, and it starts at 7 o'clock and runs till So if you're doing the 6 hour, it's 7 to 1. 12 hours, obviously 7 to 7, or 7 p.m. to 7 p.m. the following day, Friday to Saturday.
Very good.
Yep.
So what?
And the course is,
oh, sorry.
it's like a mile of trail and then a mile and a half of pavement. Almost. There's also
So it's like a mile and a half.
grass.
Is that what you just
About
said?
a mile and a half. Except that what he does is make it 2.45. So you have to do math. Like
Oh,
math.
That's the full-time race director of me. It can't be it's going to be exactly two. That's why I love when people are like, I think it's 2.47. I'm like, don't mess with me. It's 2.45.
I'm always like, can't you just make it 2.5?
I always tell people that the cut, listen, it's 112, and I don't care if you got 108 or 115. It's 112. So,
Yeah.
unless you want to be disqualified. So
That's at the cut, Art. That's the one across Connecticut, right?
yes,
Yep.
exactly. Yep.
Racy course is
All right, so
being
go
that
ahead.
being at that race is at Colt State Park, and it's just, beautiful park and it's popular and everything. As a race director, logistically, what are the differences with having something at a place like that, as far as if there are different like rules and mandates and whatever that you have to follow? I mean, I just remember the year that I did it was like, there was like a certain time of day or night where it's like between this hour and this hour, like if you weren't in the park, you can't get in. And if you were in the park, you can't get out. I mean, obviously if there was a big emergency, but yeah, so I just was curious about that part of it.
it's like a boarding house.
Yeah,
Like Hotel California.
Becky, I'm glad you asked that.
Well done, Fred. That's good. Hotel California.
No, that's a super fair question. And DEM, the Rhode Island DEM has been unbelievable. I've had some pretty tough asks as a race director, right? Like, so again, I went to Stonehill College. I still to this day put on a 2,000 person running festival at Stonehill College. So imagine being like a 30-something-year-old alum and going to, your institution that you graduated from still as a younger guy and being like, hey, I just want to put on a 2,000 person like beer race where like people drink at like 9 in the morning. We have like an open, it's good, right? So we've had some pretty tough asks. But when you think about what Colt State Park is, Colt State Park, I don't know if you guys know this about Colt State Park. I only learned it a few years ago, way after Anchor Down. But Colt State Park, and forgive me because I don't know the history or the person who donated this, but whoever donated Colt State Park to the state of Rhode Island in the contract when it was donated, I believe in his or her will, wrote that if the state accepted the land, that it had to be free for all forever.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh.
So at one point,
Ah.
management of Colt State Park, and this is a little bit before I moved here, so I think it's over a decade ago, but my family, my wife's family remembers it. There was a time where the local management tried to charge, like it was like, a heftier fee, like $10 just for a family to go see the park. So you want to go in on a Saturday, $10 to just get into Colt State Park. And obviously lawyers got involved and they looked at the bylaws and they defended the origination of Colt State Park. So going to your question, Becky, it was interesting to go to the state DEM because they are between, and I'm this is fun to have a forum for this because they're often villainized by runners. And I hear the runners going, well, isn't it ridiculous? Our taxpayer dollars, blah, 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 blah. But the DEM is between, especially in Rhode Island, a rock and a hard place. And I know this, I would like to think more than anybody because I put on, I don't know, 3, 4 events in DEM property in Rhode Island. And they have the funding of a state agency, but they don't get reimbursement. They have no funding from people coming into their park. They're not like Burlingame in, Charlestown, where they're getting campers and revenue. So there's like a micro business. They are whatever the legislation is allowed for them to be funded. And then they could have, sometimes on a Sunday, I'm one of them, right? I'll go to church with my family and we leave and we go, it's a beautiful day. Let's drive through Colt State Park. So they have to deal with a bunch of chumps like me driving through just to see the scenery. And then they get events, right? Organizations, nonprofits that are approaching them. Colt State Park gets hit up all the time. I get the call all the time. A nonprofit says, we want to put on a race. We want to put it on in Colt State Park. But the nonprofit assumes that it's free to do that, right? And then they look at the park and they'll present a course, and that course might cross 5 roadways. And the park says, well, no problem. We'd love to support this. You just need 5, park rangers, or at this intersection, since it's more dangerous and it's town road, you need a police officer and this and that. And all that's going to come to $3,000 or $10,000 or $20,000.
Mm-hmm.
And the nonprofit goes, well, we pay taxes. What do you mean? We should be able to put on a nonprofit event. But they don't understand that there's costs associated that can't get passed to the taxpayer because it's that nonprofit's risk, right? Or it's that race director's risk.
Mm-hmm.
So to answer your question, yes, it's tricky. It's very tricky. But and I'll put this out there for anybody who ever wants to be an RD. Being an RD is such an amazing way to give back to our sport. I never see it as competition. I get so pumped up when I hear, like, I have probably 3 breakfasts a year with like a new RD that wants to like give back to running in some way, shape, or form, and they think they have a new idea. But my thing to them is always, don't be afraid to drive revenue. Because at the end of the day, you need to take care of everybody involved. The DEM should be able to look at you and say, we need this budget to be able to make this event, number one, safe for the runners and comfortable for the park. So we had those conversations. My style as a race director, and advice I would give to any race director, is before you approach an entity with a race, it's your job to estimate the costs associated with that and to prepare the budget to present to them, not the other way around. Because then it puts the entity, right? Because then if I present an idea to the DEM and they go, well, yeah, but sure, we could do this. It's $6,000 for us to do this. Then it makes them the villain. And that's what most race directors do. Most race directors and most charities go to the entity and say, here's my idea. They haven't done the legwork on the financials. So Anchor Down, we went to them with an idea. And we presented that idea and they put holes in it for them. Not our holes we didn't see, for their ability to make it work in Colt State Park. When you think about it, what we have to do with Anchor Down is we have to put on what is now, we're proud of all the prestige that's kind of grown around it and the Men's Health article and all this stuff. But we're trying to put this on in a park that's publicly owned. where a family still needs to go have their 3-year-old's barbecue on a Saturday.
Hmm.
And if we're getting in the way of that, now we're trying to ask that the running community is more important than that 3-year-old's birthday. So our job is to be invisible to the general public and to be of no cost that we are not covering to the park. And that's the RD's job, and his job is to make it invisible to the runner and the community. And if he does that well, the event lasts. So the DEM has been an amazing partner. We probably had a year and a half of conversations before Anchor Down was made public. The Anchor Down, I've never told this in public forum ever, but Anchor Down was originally named the Dizzy Lobster.
Cultra exclusive. Cultra exclusive.
Okay, I'm kind of glad that it's Anchor Down because I got the anchor tattoo now.
You could have gotten
Rather
a
have
dizzy
an
lobster.
anchor than a lobster on me.
You don't want the Dizzy Lobster on you, the drunk lobster on your arm? So
I like my
That is
I like
so
my anchor.
funny.
I like
So
the lobster idea.
This gets us.
Next
It
to
could have
Don't
been.
make me tattoo a lobster.
She will do it with little
She
claw,
will do
like
it.
little
Don't make
claw on
me
one
do it.
butt cheek, little claw on the other one.
Don't want to ask what's between.
I know. I did think about that. Then I was like, I'll let that go. But you wrote it. So.
Well, she could have had crabs, right? I mean- Oh,
You're on
no.
fire, Arts.
Okay.
Watch out. So tell us about the anchor though. So what's the significance of the anchor and how did that exactly, how did that happen?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously it's a symbol that I associate with Rhode Island. So there was that, and there were a million different directions we were going in. And I can't believe I told you guys the Dizzy Lobster thing.
I
But
love that.
It's awesome. People say
I
all
love
sorts
it
of
too.
shit. Here,
Now
so-
that's
Now I
how I
wanna
think
get
of
a
you.
dizzy-
we
I'm
should
gonna end
just
up
call
getting a Dizzy Lobster.
call you DL.
I feel like you guys are going to
Lobster.
show up at the event next year with a protest sign to rename Anchor Dizzy Lobster.
We'll have
Bring
our
back
own race
Dizzy.
shirts. It'll be the Dizzy Lobsters.
Oh my God, we have to.
You could
That
just
would be
make
really good.
Dizzy Lobster could be your mascot. Hi, I'm Dizzy the Lobster.
That could
No,
be.
it can't be a
it could have
lobster. It
some-
has to be a lobster.
Lobster.
Lobster. You better show up in a lobster costume.
Or a lobster.
But yeah, with the anchor, we just wanted when I was trying to come up with a name for it, obviously, like anything, right? You have an idea, a little store or something you're proud of. And I was trying to convey what it was, and it sounded like cute. And I'm like, I don't want this to be cute. I want to scare away everybody who thinks this is cute. Because, I put on, now I don't want to sound, I got to be careful here. We're all recreational runners, right? We are all recreational runners. Now, as I get older, I'm very recreational, right? Like running is now jogging for me as I get more broken. But the thing about Anchor Down is I didn't want it to be like very flat course, perfect time of year, beautiful fall. Like you guys
Flat
know,
and
you're signing up
fast.
for racing,
Right.
like PR opportunity.
Yeah.
All that stuff, and I do that for our own races when that makes sense, when that's the race, right? Like
Right.
put 2 cold beers at the finish. Those are some of my favorite races that I want to do with friends. I want to bring my college buddies. I'm gonna have a great time, but that's not Anchor Down. Anchor Down, I wanted to be like, don't come. You don't want to come. Like this is old school, ultra difficult, and if that appeals to you, we want you there. And if that's 50 people, 200 people, blah blah blah. So Anchor, I like the idea of Anchor because it sounded like tougher. And then the Anchor Down, I forget where I got the inspiration of it. I think I just saw an image but I was like, hey, Anchor, because I knew in my conversations, going back to Becky's question about the park, I knew we were going to be approved to allow ultra runners to stay in the park, above and beyond just like a little ultra where you could set up a chair. No. You are setting up and you aren't leaving till you get your goal. And if that means you come back the next year and the next year, that's the culture we want to build. So Anchor Down was like, no, you drop anchor here. You're here and you leave when you do what you set out to do, whatever that means for you. And that was also part of the not doing, I've gotten a lot of flack from people hey, can you do 30 hours or 34 hours for newer people that want to do the 100?
Can I get an early start on that 24, please?
Yeah, exactly. And that's why we don't say yes. Not that I don't.
Oh yeah,
Not that I don't understand that plight. I totally get that plight. But I want Anchor Down to be everybody's unique opportunity to like drop anchor and do the hardest thing they did all year in a beautiful, beautiful place surrounded by people that have the same exact mission. So Anchor Down just spoke to me, and it sounded like that.
Right.
Do you get do you get a lot of, I mean, thinking about like the difficulty, I mean, there's the difficulty of running for 24 hours, but then as you say, the hottest weekend of the year, and you know, like there's
starting at night
parts of
too.
it that is just, well, and there's parts where there's just no shade and stuff. Do you find that you get a lot of people, or have you in the past, a lot of people that, you know, sign up that are just not, they're just not prepared for those kind of like additional difficulties, if you will?
Yeah. So, Beck, you get the gold star on the question for the day. Because, you know, I only say that, I say that seriously because when we launched the qualification standards, my worry as a runner, not as a race director, just as a runner, was that the qualifications would tell people that that we think we are like the ultra. And that's not what we were trying to do with the qualification standards. We were trying to say that, okay, our vision worked. Other people respected this idea of being like unapologetically hard on the hottest weekend of the year. Like all the things that I'm proud of, like the old school ultra that I talk about. Other people dug it, right? And then people started signing up, and then it sold out in like 20 seconds. So people that were doing it couldn't even get in because they didn't type fast enough. They were an elite ultra runner, but they didn't type fast enough. And meanwhile, while that was happening, and I was like looking at the entry list going, oh my God, so-and-so didn't get in, but they placed like 5th last year or whatever. And they were written up in their hometown paper in like Canada about Anchor Down, but they didn't get in. And then I have a guy, and no fault to one of these guys, I'm going to not be too specific, but then I have a guy basically saying like, yeah, I'm trying running at the starting line. And I heard about it, right? And that guy comes up to me after 2 laps with like an injury and lectures me on adjustments to the trail we can make to make it more newbie friendly.
If you paved this whole thing,
right,
and gave us umbrellas,
right.
Oh,
so
I would so want to be right there when he was having that conversation with you, just to be like.
So as a race director, we get that too, right? So my vision for Anchor Down was like, okay, now we have a problem because we were written up in a national magazine, or 3 of them, Men's Health, Ultra Running Magazine, all without ever advertising, without ever spending money. So they have no incentive to write us up, but it's like catching wind, and people are seeing it and they're going, oh, that's badass. I want to do it. And they can do it before they earn any of it. So they haven't given back to your community. They've never volunteered for an event. They maybe have never even run a race, but they think they get bragging rights by signing up for ADU. And now it's on their social media, and they're like, I'm in. FOMO. Right? So my job as RD, again, I go back to the beginning, is like, how do I protect the competition? And I protect the competition by not making it elite, by allowing new runners to experience an ultra or a difficult ultra, but by filtering out the people that aren't willing to work to get it.
So what are the
qualifications
criteria?
Are actually, personally, I don't think are ridiculous. And I'm a back of the pack slow runner that, you know,
ran 112
I'm never going to win
miles
anything.
Last weekend.
I did 112 miles last weekend. Yeah, I can go far, but I'm slow. But I don't find that, like, one of them is your October race, and you got to do 22 miles in 11 hours.
Yep. All you have to do. Yeah.
Yeah. So what is the breakdown of the rules or the qualifications?
It's actually confusing.
Yeah, so it's confusing for me. I'll put your listeners to sleep if I go through them all. But in a very rough way, there's 2 tiers. Okay, so the first tier is called preferred entry. So that's on January 2nd every single year, 7:00 Eastern Standard Time, and that goes to the people that meet the preferred entry qualification standards. And there are 4 different paths in that, and it's on our website. But if you read them, it's very clear what we're trying to do. So one of them is you have finished anchor down, finished, not just run, but finished an anchor down twice in the history of the race. Someday that will probably go to 3. So what that is that you are a hardened anchor down community member, and we're trying to protect your ability to continue to be such.
What does finished mean, though?
It depends on the race. So
Okay.
There's a minimum.
yeah,
Oh, okay.
6, 12, and 24 all have different finishing standards.
So like for a 24.
24 went up
It's like
last year.
50 something,
55,
51, 52 miles, something like that.
Yeah.
Les probably gets it better than the
It's
RD.
2
Maybe.
more miles than you're able to do. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, no, and then it's what it I forgot what the 12-hour one is.
It's 40. Technically,
40
it's
miles.
harder mathematically than the 24.
Yeah.
I always say the 12 hours the hardest.
Mhm.
And then the 6 hours like 21 or 22 miles.
Yeah, 22, I think.
22 in 6 hours.
Yeah, so it's very doable, right? So we're not saying you had to perform in an elite way, but you had to show up and have a showing, right? You couldn't twist an ankle and walk off and blah blah blah.
Oh yeah.
You're not doing one loop and getting a medal.
Right. And then the second one, and I guess I'm passing this quiz. The second one is you completed last year. You finished the previous year, and because we wanted to protect somebody's ability to show up who didn't do to their standard and show up. Because again, we're trying to make it a very personal event. It's like each person's anchor down. Like you ran 80, you wanted 82 in the 24 hours. You want to get back, and you're right away. We want to protect that person. Then we wanted to offer somebody a way in early, so a promised way in. So that's a tougher standard. So I don't have them in front of me, but you have to have run, I think it's like a 50-mile race in the last 12 months of an ultra, and you have to finish to that RD standard. And I forget what it is for 12-hour and 6-hour. And then so there's the last one is a preferred entry event. And our thinking was okay, so I'm not an experienced ultra runner. I'm a back of the packer, but I've read about anchor down and I want to earn my way to anchor down, but I'm not like a gifted runner. And I'm willing to put in the effort.
You're
So
no Becky Burke, but you know.
You're more Celeste. Celeste level.
No.
Well, I'm not fast. I mean, I can do a lot of miles, but I'm not fast.
Yeah,
Not what I heard.
I'm talking about running. Just running.
Oh. Okay.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, that last tier is we're going to name, because we don't want to be elitist, right? Like, how do we bring other ultra events in as feeders that help grow other events that have room for growth? Because Anchor Down has no more room for growth. It hasn't since year 2. Like, we don't want to grow it.
So how many
Which
runners
is one thing
do you
I love
have?
about it.
What do you max out at?
We will go up to, I estimate, 230 every year. So we have different ways to get in. This year, I think we ended up at 236. So it's somewhere between 228 and 230 something every year. I try to hit 230, but obviously there's the deferral from last year because they had stage 4 cancer, or there's the weird situations that I kind of reserve an asterisk for. So it's 230 every single year, and we'll never go up. And that's just because literally in year 2, me and 5 of my crew looked at each other and we were like, this is amazing. Like, this is so fun. And if, as race people, as people like looking at you guys being like, and if we go to 250, we feel like the park didn't impose it on us. Like, we imposed it on us because we feel like we're not serving the runners. Like, at the end of 24 hours, I'm like hugging everybody coming through, and I'm literally talking to the first 10 people in each race going, here's where you are on the race. You are 27 seconds behind third place. That person's on a world record or Anchor Down course record. And I'm literally lining up the competition, and they all know it. And we're able to literally on a first name basis, Celeste knows, right? Like,
it's family.
It's family. And every single volunteer, most of our volunteers in the last 12 hours of the race volunteer for 12 hours. And those are 3 shifts. And they're like, no, I don't want to miss anything. And they know every single runner that comes through on a first name basis. They know what that person's goal is. They're helping them do math. They're helping them figure out if they could hit goal on clock time. They're doing that. We have calculators at the aid station. We have charts of the
But
miles.
they're doing that from the beginning.
So Celeste has conversations with every single runner as well, ongoing conversations. It's kind of like watching, the people in Washington Square Park who play like 6 games of chess at once. That's Celeste, like with her social calendar on these races.
Well, at Anchor Down, it's between her swearing at me that she's having conversations.
Right.
That's a true story.
I can't believe that, honestly.
But yeah, we just feel like it's a magic number. Like it's amazing. We feel like if we add to it, we're doing a disservice. So we were like, oh no, that's the number, and that hasn't changed since year 2.
So as far as
and the qualifying races, just real quick, the races to get you in are Hamster Wheel, Spring Fling, the Rhode Island one.
Yeah, Rhode Island Trail Classic. The Spring
That's
Fling.
the 11-hour one, right? Is that 11 hours?
Yeah, the 11-hour Rhode Island Classic, the 10-hour Spring Fling here at Connecticut Trail Mixers.
Yep.
Hamster Wheel up in New Hampshire.
And then we are currently in the middle of a nerdy website update, so it's more Google searchable because we've had some issues with that. But once that goes live, probably next month, we're adding, which we've already announced on Facebook, but we're adding the TARC because it just felt so silly not to have a TARC event in this community.
Yep.
Yeah.
So we're having the TARC Fall Classic included.
Awesome.
Oh, great. Yeah.
So there are a lot of options. Like I said, I think because there was an uproar when you guys started qualifying.
Options.
They're good options, and there are options where you're going to see 30 other people that do Anchor Down every year. And that was the thought, right? The thought was, if you're not willing to go to a race and be surrounded by other people that are part of this community that have an A race in August that happens to be your A race, maybe, unless you're doing, Badwater that year or whatever, like a lot of those people are going to be out on that trail going, house training, going for Anchor Down. And if you're not willing to sign up for another community event in that process to get to the one that you're calling your A race, that you're trying to get preferred entry to, our thought was, well, good. Well, those are the people, they don't have to. We're not trying to say no to Anchor Down. We're just trying to make it so that if your dream, recreational or elite, to get to Anchor Down, if your dream is to get to Anchor Down, we want you to have a path to Anchor Down. And I'll tell you this first and foremost, I'm not going to drop her name, but we had somebody that called my cell phone, got my cell phone to get into Anchor Down after it sold out. And I the name on my phone. I'm what? And I said no. And she was 35 minutes after Anchor Down sold out. And she was like, well, but my credentials. I was like, we don't care. You could have done preferred entry. You could have been there clicking your button. I'm not. So we're never changing the competition. I refuse, one of the things I love about Anchor Down is Chris Capolini 4 or 5 years ago put up, I think it was the 5th fastest 100 in 24 hours. And he did it at Anchor Down and it got no press. And all of the others were Umstead, right? These flat, faster hundreds, Rocky Raccoon, and there's Chris Cap going. It was the year we were 98. Celeste knows 5 people went home in an ambulance live on
that
Facebook.
year was hell.
Yeah, and he put up a ridiculous 100 miles.
Yeah, and watching him go is pretty impressive, though.
Oh, he's an animal.
It's that was overnight was 90 something.
Yeah,
degrees. That was the hottest year. The only year that was worse was the torrential downpour.
Yeah, that was bad.
That was bad.
I heard about that one.
Yeah, that was.
It was fun, but it was. There was a video.
Was there? Oh, the start, right?
Yeah, of the start where it just started pouring.
And that's when it started. Was right when we were lining up, and within one loop, the entry into the trail was just 6 inches of mud. It was so good. And there was rivers across the road, and I chafed so bad I couldn't walk the next day.
When you guys left that next night and we were packing up, we were going to take down all the flagging and stuff on the course. And it was there was a couple days of panic. Becky, you asked about the DEM. We're looking at the trail and we're oh my God, is the trail ever going to be the same? And it returned, but it took a couple weeks.
Yeah.
Well, it's the spring fling a couple different times at where,
or Notchview last year.
Gosh.
Becky, Notchview last year. That's how it was. It was just,
So I have a question, Jay, regarding the entry process and the it seems like a pretty straight continuous growth as far as like or the interest level has continued to grow with the race. Now, you've heard of like the hard rock standards and some of the other more popular races like the different systems that they have you kind of thought through some of that? And I mean, I know that there's really no good way to do a lot of this, but
Yeah, no, I mean, I haven't said no. I've never said, to anybody because I don't think it's possible that we're never going to adjust those qualification standards.
mhm.
Um, I can tell you what my goal is, and my goal and what I think we did well, not to toot our own horn, but toot, but me and my team, which we basically went out I bought them around. We went to a brewery. And no joke, because we're real business-like and official. But we sat around over a couple beers, and we literally just said, how do we protect the interests of the new runner, the seasoned runner, the elite runner, the recreational runner? And that's how we came up with that. I think we've done that well. I think I've looked at a lot of those other races standards, and I don't want to cast any negativity because I think they all serve a different purpose, right? Like I qualified for the Western States 107 times. I never got in, and I'm never going to get in now. I'm 10 years older, and I have Celeste, I think, knows this from hanging out with me at Anchordown, but my arches collapsed. My ultra running days are probably behind me unless there's some scientific miracle on ankle rehabilitation and tendon replacement. And I could run 20 miles a week, but I'm never getting to the Western States. And I qualified 7 damn times. Every single year I'd sit on the couch with my wife, and we'd make a night out of it. And I never got in. And my goal is to not be that. My goal is to protect people's ability to get in. So I'm just going to kind of leave it open that we could still mess with those standards every year to continue to protect people who are part of it. I think, is there a chance it does get a little bit more competitive in terms of what you have to accomplish? Yes. But I don't think it'll be more than what people have to accomplish in terms of God-given running ability. It might be a little bit more elbow grease to get in. But my goal is to keep it at that. And I think if you do enough of that, I can tell you I get complaints every single year from people who are like, I'm not reading your damn qualification standard. I don't have time. I work, and I get some nasty email because they look at the qualification page and they go, screw this. And I get it. I'm busy too. That's not the person I'm trying to protect. I'm trying to protect the person who hears about Anchordown, that knows somebody that might have done it, that is passionate about being a part of it. That's the person I'm trying to protect, not the person that is not willing to read 3 paragraphs.
Well, and I think it's fair that not every race is for every runner, right?
Agreed.
Like I will never qualify for Western States. Can I bust out 100 miles? Yes, I can. But I'm not the runner for Western States, and that's okay, and I don't think it's fair. I'm not anti-inclusivity, obviously. I think there's a race for everybody. It's just acceptable to me that not every race is for every runner.
Agreed.
Yeah.
And I think, ultra running and trail running. Well, no, I take that back. I was about to put them in the same sentence. I think ultra running, part of its DNA is being difficult, right? Like obviously, and a lot of ultras, you see it in their like somebody has a new idea of an ultra, and they're like, fast course, perfect foliage, like easy, great first time ultra. There's a place for that ultra. That's a perfect ultra for your first time ultra runner. Right. There's a place for that ultra, but it's not bred in the DNA of ultra running. Like the DNA of ultra running is like, don't come here. It's funny. One of my last ultras, I went to the, I don't know if any of you guys have done this, but I did the Tussey Mountain 50 miler. Any of you done that?
Mm-mm.
Hey, all right,
No.
Fred.
There you go, Fred.
Of course, Fred.
Of course,
Hey,
he
twice.
has.
2 times.
All right, so I did that one
his
year,
sleep.
Fred, when that was like the national championship of 50 mile. And I had a bad day.
It used to be the national championship for a few years. It was.
Was it?
Yeah.
So I don't know if you might have been there the same year, but I had an amazing run there one year. An amazing run. I mean, like life experience. Horrible run. But I'm like at mile 35 and I'm bonking and I'm like hiking up the mountain and I'm just miserable. And I'm like, at the time, I'm like training in like borderland in Easton, Massachusetts. And like a hill for me is like a 3-minute climb.
Oh,
And,
Larry Holmes.
but the night before that
Oh,
race,
different Easton. Sorry, Pennsylvania. Sorry. Never mind.
sorry,
Sorry.
the night before that race, I forget the ultra runner that got up. He was an older ultra runner that was competitive in like the late 80s. If I think long enough, I'll be able to think of him. But he got up the night before and he gave a speech, and it was at like the pasta dinner. But remember when a lot of races had those? It's going away.
Yep.
So there's a big pasta dinner, and I'm at the table with my dad. We drive down from Rhode Island, and he gets up, and this is his speech. He's basically like, I got it. I wish I had the name for you guys because I'll get it after the podcast. But he gets up and he's like, "Good evening. I'm going to race you sons of bitches tomorrow." He goes, back in my day, all you folk with your watches and your GPS and your fancy shoes and this was when, remember when fuel belt was a big thing in ultras? Not anymore.
Yeah.
So he's like, a fancy belt on your waist with all that hydration you need. He goes, back in my day, we'd go out in the woods for 50 miles with a Poland Springs bottle in our hand between the three of us, and we pass it off to each other. And he goes, and that's how I know I'm going to beat you tomorrow. Good luck.
That was Fred, actually, who said that.
That was Fred, yeah.
No, I'm
That's
sure I know
so
that guy
awesome.
though. Whoever it is, I'm sure.
Yeah.
He was a Marine who still ran like a Marine.
I'm forgetting his name, but I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, we're probably both on the same page.
Course,
But he got up, and I watched that, and I went. And at the time, I'm still in it, right? I'm like faster. I felt
You peed yourself a little.
What's that?
I said you peed yourself a little bit.
A little
right?
bit,
I mean,
but
it's okay. It's nothing wrong with that.
But I looked at that and I listened. And I said, "This is what I love about my sport." And I think a lot of that's gone in ultra running. And and ultras are trying to appeal to people. And one of the awesome things about ultras is if they're done right, they don't need to appeal to people. It could be 20 people saying go. Some of these last man standing events now are true to the sport. They're awesome.
Yeah, no, there's something to be said for that, but it's kind of weird. I think the thing that's changed is that like it used to be, I think that it used to be that, and you just kind of did it, and half the time you would talk about it and half the time you wouldn't. But now you got everybody's paddling their douche canoe, right? So everybody's out there, talking, and I have fun with, I have fun talking shit just because it's so ridiculous for me to talk shit that I just have fun doing it. So, but there's a lot of people out there, like you said, who will just sign up for something as if they've already done it, because you know what, I'm training for the cut, and I'm gonna, or not training for the cut, but there's,
Right. I get what you're saying.
Definitely, I didn't mean
that
for the cut for anybody who signed up. So I'm not talking about you, whoever you're thinking. I don't know, whatever.
Was it Frank Bazanich?
Now I got to Google. I'm going to look off screen here. Frank Bazanich. I'll recognize
Because he was a Marine and an ultra runner from the 80s. That's what it made me.
Huh. Oh, it was Goggins.
Should I tell you I was a kid in the 80s or?
Art, you said like that there's this change where everybody's like paddling their own canoe.
Yes.
But do you think part of that too is just with how social media is and everything, like where before it was
definitely.
like you find out about a race at another race, when you have that paper thing that you have to fill out, or through the New England Runner calendar, and the results, you find them through some obscure place, and like where that the only people years ago that knew about my running were just other runners, because how would anybody else know about it? Like,
except that you told them at the lunch table. So, but yeah, no, you're right. You're right. You're right. A lot of it is the nature of, that's why I always feel weird with social media sometimes, just because like, I don't know, it's kind of like a weird, it is a weird space. Like it kind of encourages you to do that, and then it becomes difficult to, like, here's the difference is that there was a website called or Running to Win, which was just a running log where you'd go in and you'd enter all of your training and stuff like that. And you would talk to other people about, every once in a while you'd talk to other people about that. But when I filled out the log and entered my run, it was for me. It was like, this was the pace that I did. This was the training that I did. Oh, my ankle hurts a little bit. And, I had a good run. I had whatever. And this is where I ran. And then, but now it seems like I don't see, maybe people do it except for Becky Burke. People don't seem to be using, as far as I know, don't seem to be using Strava that way. It's now like, not that there's anything wrong with it, but I think that when people post things on Strava now, it's not so much for their own record. It's more like, it's more like a post, like a Facebook post.
Which is why I have 11 people following me and I follow 11 people. Because I don't like that. It makes me very anxious to I just want to go and do my run. So the idea of I don't know, people looking and being like, oh, you ran over here and I noticed that mile was slower than this and this mile, that just makes me anxious where I'm like, Well,
because you're a real runner and in my opinion, real runners know how recreational we all are, right? It doesn't matter how fast you are. I've been, just because of what I do, I have some friends that are most elite of the elite. And we'll be hiking up in New Hampshire. And I'll be with some, I'm not dropping names, but I'll be with somebody who's won giant events.
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden, some 19-year-old jerk in split shorts on some crazy traverse will run by doing a 6-minute flat on something I can't hike at 20. Yeah. And the person I'm with who's won major races will look back and go, fuck that guy. A real runner knows that that's what's beautiful about our sport is it is truly, truly so unique. Unless you are at that top, I'm not even going to make up the percent, right? But we all watch that top, right? Even those who have won the major events here in New England. That's not even the top. That's not even the close to the top, right? The world of running is so deep that those of us who think we're elite because we beat a Strava thing or we got the man in the mountain on whatever, I think the real runners, there's something to say for I don't do it anymore. I used to, but I used to have my logbook that was this thick where I'd log my run every day. And it was for me. It was just for me. It was for me to look back the next year to go, how'd I do this year? I was lazy. I got to step it up. That's the old school running community.
Yeah. Yeah. But there is, here's the other part though, is that I think there's also a definite place for races that aren't challenging, but just that kind of own that, because there's it's at times it's not just that you can still be a real runner and not be fast.
Agreed.
You can really where all of a sudden you're going to be up against cutoffs, but you still want to have the fun, right? And it's not because you're taking selfies or anything like that, but just sometimes you get hyponatremia or whatever happens to hit you, you get a couple, you get a little bit older, or, maybe you just weren't that fast to start with, or the course doesn't agree with you that day, but you still want to go. So, I don't know. I had always I put on, or I don't know if it's an event, but the Cut 112, and I don't have any real cutoffs on that, except for the most part, except that you can't sleep, because I don't want it to be an overnight.
I was wait a minute. Yes, there are. We can't sleep when we have a certain number of hours that we have to finish.
You do. Okay. Besides that,
not that I'm one to slumber.
Those cutoffs are pretty generous, in a sense.
What are the hours, Art?
Most people take more than 30 hours to finish.
Yeah.
And
I would say few people take less than 30.
And I've never done it under 40.
Only the jerks take less than 30.
I've never done it under 40. And I happen to have they were anchor down days. Okay. They were 90 degrees and, or between 42 degrees and 90 degrees in the same event, in the rain and everything like that. But it becomes a different thing, so, and that's,
I think to to your point though, by you just saying like, I get that it's the same thing with anchor down, right? Like there's no expectation of pace or elite level
Mhm.
but to you, that rule about not sleeping is what keeps it pure,
Yeah.
right?
Oh, it is. Yeah. Agreed. Yes. That's 100% because like, yeah, I mean, sure, we could put, and I think that it's weird because I think sometimes if you do put cutoffs, people raise the bar to that, because I have like, I think it's like a 45-hour cutoff or something like that. And there's people who like, and it happened to me at Wakefield, actually. I was 75 miles in and I had 6 hours to go. And I was like, fuck, a 6 hour marathon. I only have a marathon to do. I can do a 6 hour in my sleep, especially at that point. So like I could walk it in. And so I basically did, because I was so surprised to be there. I was just gonna try to go for 24 hours. So, just and then I kind of slowed myself down just to basically make that, I made the cutoff by whatever, I I I
You're
got the
getting your
mileage, but
24 hours worth.
yeah, yeah. But
Art, did you
yeah,
run the year Akos Konya ran it? Do you remember him?
um,
One bad water one year, and he showed up at Lake Quinnipiac and ran the.
yeah, I think the year I ran it was, and I'd have to check, but I think it was 2008.
Okay. Well,
So it
that's
was,
one of my favorite memories there is like I'm in like fourth place or third place in the
mhm.
24 hour and Akos Konya runs and here I am like proud of myself, right? And then Akos Konya runs by me who had just like weeks before won Badwater.
Mm.
He runs by me and we're in different races. So he's in the 12-hour race and I'm in the
Mm.
24-hour race and he's like one lap behind me just eating bananas. And I was like, ultra running is the meanest sport. And then he won his race and was having his award ceremony. And
Mm.
like basically, if they counted the 12-hour race and the 24-hour race, Celeste Becky, it would basically be like at Anchor Down, the 12-hour runner almost winning the lead team on the 24 hour.
Right.
It
Yeah,
was
yeah.
cruel.
Yes.
Oh.
Can I ask you what is your uh, what is your most memorable story that you have of Anchor Down? Like whether it's like, somebody that you watched finish or start or
Oh gosh. There's so many.
It could be one of the top three.
All right.
So we don't have to.
There's some confidential ones that I'll glaze over, but just as having getting to know a lot of the athletes, we've had multiple uh, losses in people that have run it and have run it in stages of their disease that knew they were having in a stage of their disease and people who have come out on the other side of that. So that's been super emotional, and obviously those are the top. But in the sport sense, and I might just be saying this because it stands atop my memory because it was this past year, but we had a moment in the 24-hour this year, which got lost to a lot of the runners that had already left. But in the final hour and a half of the women's race, which is always interesting because there's so few women. There's four as of now. Now I think five actually that have gone 100 miles at Anchor Down. It's like really hard to do at Anchor Down.
Yeah, it is.
So, it's a big feat to join that group, right? It's an elite group, and we've never, even though I've gotten some emails from women like, "Hey, can you change that? Can you have a different category?" I'm like, "No, because now you're taking away from the
right.
five who have earned that prestige." So this year we had two women battling it out, and it was evident with 2 hours remaining in the race that two women were going to become basically fourth and fifth in the history of the race to go 24 hours. So, and I forgive me if I'm saying her name wrong. I think it's Kwan from Massachusetts, Somerville, I think. She's, we think, in second place with Kathy Jakes in first place, one lap ahead. And Kwan had her data and came through at again, hours remaining in the race and told us, hey, I think there's an issue with my data. And we're like, no, we've been watching you. We're obsessing over you because I don't know. That was when I informed her she was basically with Kathy Jakes on course. They were both on potential course record pace. And I was like, you're about to become the fourth woman in the history of the race to go 100 at this thing. And I was like, so no, we haven't missed any of your laps. I've been watching you obsessively for the past 4 hours. Here's where you are in the race. She goes, no. I think it happened last night. I just stopped at my tent and I forget the conversation, but she informed us of something that happened in the middle of the night that she sort of like thought was her mistake. And then as the day evolved and she did math, she's like, no, I missed a lap. So I go back to my timer, and this is common in Anchor Down just because of the amount of people and the heat and so, it happens 10 times throughout the race, but usually we catch it. We're at the computer 24 hours. We see the missed lap, or somebody comes around. They're like, whoa, no. We've never had that issue, especially at the front of the pack. So she tells us about it. I tell her, well, stop talking to me. Go on the lap. I will chase you down and run with you and fill you in. Give me a lap to look at the data. We look at the data. We find a missed lap. So now there's like no time left in the race. It's like 80 something, maybe 90 degrees. And I find out Kathy Jakes, who thinks she's in first, comes through the finish line to a crowd that's like going crazy. The MC announces she's on course record pace. It's streaming live to social media. And I realize it as she's 2 minutes out into the woods on her, what might be her final lap. So I have to chase her into the woods and let her know she's actually 7 minutes behind in second. Quan comes back around. I have to let her know she's actually in first by 7 minutes. So and forgive me for the nuance of this, but I chase Kathy into the woods to tell her there was some choice work. What's that?
She beats you up.
Oh yeah, it almost happened. I ran quick that moment. I tell her, I give her all her information, and now to do my due diligence to be as fair as possible, which is what we do. We try to share information to try to make the race competitive. We start that in the last 3 to 4 hours. So now I start running backwards on the course to find Quan, who doesn't realize she's in first. So as I go to find Quan, Kathy turns on her afterburners so much. She's such a competitor. So she's at mile like 98. She turns on her afterburners. By the time my RD tired ass gets to Quan, Kathy is 15 feet off her back, about to pass her.
Oh
so I have a moment where, as the RD, I have to look at second place, tell her she's actually in first, but the runner that's about to pass her is 15 feet behind her. So we basically had at mile 99.9 a sprint 200-meter finish of two women, and nobody in the crowd even knew it was like happening. And me and like 8 staff who had just figured out are like, oh my God, and we're trying to like make sure they both have the. So I'm like literally running alongside them, going like, you guys are neck and neck. They're like, nope, she's first, and they're being cordial. And then I'm like, no, you guys don't know. You're not, don't be cordial. You have 200 meters. Whoever crosses next is fourth in history of the race. And all of a sudden it was on, and Kathy's legs had it. And Quan kind of like, they I think exchanged a quick hug. It was like, go get him. I think Quan figured out she was going to give it all she had, but her legs didn't have what Kathy's had. They sprinted it out. Then the MC tells that Patrick Heron, local.
Sure.
Female.
Yes.
So he's our MC. So he tells social media what's going on. He tells the crowd at Anchor Down, which at the end of the race is only like 50 people. It's a bunch of diehards. So he tells the crowd, and then the crowd does the math, and Kathy comes through and does the math and realizes she's got her average lap plus a minute of the whole day to go out and grab another loop and become the first woman in the history of the race to run 105, essentially. And she does it and comes back in with like 60 seconds to spare. It was insane.
Oh,
that's so crazy.
Wow. That is very cool.
Wow.
And something like that happens every year. It's like, so every year I look at it, and I'm sorry if that was long-winded, but every year we look at it, and just as a family, my family and the crew that helps me, we just look around, we go, that is ultra running in its purest form. We have to protect that.
Yes, Jay, that's podcast gold. Okay, don't never apologize for a hell of a story.
Yeah, that's a beautiful story.
That's a good one.
Good question, Becky.
I know.
That's what you.
I
do.
will say
that they
too,
hugged. I just think that's so great.
Yeah,
I always want to hug everybody. I don't know why. Like when I'm in races and I'm
you
like,
smack
"Good
my
job,
ass
good
every
job."
time you pass me.
I know. True.
That's her way
But
of
it's really
hugging
like
you.
you just want to like just squeeze everybody's cheeks and be
Called
like,
a Heine
"Yay."
hug. So which we
I do
don't
like
we don't encourage, we don't condone that, right, Fred?
That's correct. And we do not have the Heine Huggers sponsor either. We turned them down.
That's right. Trail
This could
Spanks
be,
and
you
Heine
know what?
Huggers.
This could be a Heine Hugger. Like,
I'd be
I should
careful
run with
that
this
near
in my
your
next race and just,
And as long as you're not making physical contact, it's not weird.
no,
No,
it
it's
has to be a
weird.
physical
I
contact.
didn't
It
touch
could
you.
be
This
weird.
No, I gotta
massager
make
did.
contact.
So I have to tell you what Jay did for one of my very, very close friends, Tony, has done anchor down a few times. And the last year he did it, he was struggling with stage 4 cancer. And he was still working full time, and he had gone through chemo. I think he had chemo Wednesday, worked full time Thursday and Friday, and then drove up Friday night.
Wow.
And yeah, and he was short one lap when he finished. You know what I mean? So like, I think at the time it was 19 miles that he had to do, and he only did 17. And afterwards, when Jay found out, he sent him a medal, which I think Tony might have been buried with that medal. I think he might have been. If he wasn't, it was definitely part of the funeral. And I think our entire running community and all of our friends were so grateful that you were willing to do that for him, because, you know, he was a class act, and he was what running was all about. And he was there, and he just didn't have the time to finish that last lap. And it was just the next year, it was called One More Lap, and it was in Tony's honor. And I don't know if I've ever expressed how grateful both myself and a lot of Tony's friends were that you were willing to do that for him. So thank you for that. Well, I'm thinking about it.
Well, the things goes back to you, because I bring him up regularly, and I think of him regularly, and obviously I didn't know him that well. But I wrote him a letter with that medal. I'm trying not to get choked up. I wrote him a letter with that medal because I didn't want him to see that medal as a failure. And what I mean by that is I didn't want him to get the medal and think I'm an exception because of what I'm going through. So I wrote him a very short letter that basically just said, if there's ever been an act at Anchor Down, that's the most Anchor Down run in the history of what this race is and what it stands for. It is that run. So this is not an exception. It is different. It is the only time I've ever done it, and as an RD. And there have been other times where I've been berated by people at the finish line because they're like, I mean, we've had broken teeth and broken arms, and they're like, well, I want my medal. I'm like, you don't get it. You didn't fit. This is not daycare. This is Anchor Down. Go home. Right. And I'll call them and check on them the next day. But it's different. What he did is the most ultra running thing that I've ever seen in ultra running. And that is, to me, like when I talk about protecting the every runner, that's the most exceptional. Like if we could all, I think all of us probably can share that. We don't dream of winning the Boston Marathon because we all know that's not going to happen. But longevity. Sorry, Art. Sorry, my apologies.
Okay, all right. Just
a boy can dream, right?
Yeah.
The common folk of us, not.
I think ninth time's a charm, right?
What Tony did was the most Anchor Down thing I'll leave it at that. It was the most Anchor Down thing that I've ever seen. And if there's ever been a moment I've been proud of what I do for a living more, well, there's never been a moment I've been more proud of what I do for a living, because I felt like I had a little bit, just a tiny bit of a role in his opportunity to run his race, to like live his legacy, right? And that's the fun thing about what I do on the Anchor Down side, is I get to watch you guys like leave your story at it and then get jealous that you get to do that. I just think what a beautiful way to leave this world is, and I'm sure he did it in other ways with his family. I could tell his character by what he did that day, and that was amazing to see.
It was his second to last race too. So
that counts visibility.
Okay, I'm getting emotional. Sorry, he was one of my best friends. He actually helped me train for Anchor Down. He helped me train 1 year. And that's my first 50 miler, which happened during COVID. So it wasn't during that, but it was because of him and training with him. So.
And I think he lived on in that, right? Because I think that year he rallied the community. You know, like everybody, people who didn't know him. I didn't know him. I didn't interact with him much at that race, but I kind of knew what was happening, right? And I knew more after the fact. But like then luckily our photographer John that year got like 20 pictures. He didn't get a lot that year. I think he came in late from a wedding, and one of those pictures he got was like a portrait of Tony, smiling. And we were able to post that and just like, I don't know. I think people saw that on social media and were like, hell yeah. Like that's ultra running. Not going fast, not running far. Like that is ultra running.
Yeah. That dedication and the pushing through, and that's who he was. So yeah, thank you for doing that for him.
Thank you.
Very good.
And on that kind of, because every year you have a new like theme, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like what was it? We had Chasing Twilight, Ride the Lightning.
Earn the Sunset was my favorite.
Earn the Sunset. There's so many of them.
If you build it, they will come.
This year's Forged in Fire.
Forged in Fire.
Okay. Huh.
Still working on the hood.
I'm sure I'll buy one.
Very good. So, Jay, could you tell us a little bit about some of your other races? Like, how many races do you typically put on a year, and what are they about?
Yeah, so Rhode Island Trail Classic is the only other one in the ultra running community. So we're super proud of that one. That's still growing. It's in Charlestown, Rhode Island, on what I think is a very unknown, unrespected, is that a word, trail in Rhode Island, the Vin Gormley Trail, named after the gentleman who basically took care of that trail and largely carved it out just out of a love of the forest. So that is a qualifier for Anchordown. And the other ones are very far reaching. We do one of my larger ones, and the one at my alma mater is the Narragansett Summer Running Festival in partnership with Narragansett Beer. That is just the exact opposite of Anchordown. It's just fun. It's a 10K and a half marathon with the largest after party in running. We have live music, 2 16-ounce beers at the finish line for everybody. We usually we sell out at about 15 to 1,800 each year, depending on campus inflow. And that is another part of my personality, which is just like, I hate to say it, but a fun-loving, like running community, bringing together. I just we wanted to put something on that was like an epic throwdown in the middle of July when everybody else said it was too hot to run. So that's the Narragansett Summer Running Festival, one of our larger races. And then there's a bunch of others that are kind of everything in between. We put on another one in Colt State Park, the Colt State Park Half Marathon, that's shut off every year at 400 that sells out because we love Colt State Park, and that's where I run every day. And then a lot of my work, over 50% of my work now is, so 50% of my day is races that we call our promotions, events that we're proud of, that we think the running community could use. And then 50% of my day is spent on charitable races where I'm brought in as a consultant to make them larger, more profitable, more runner-centric, and basically carve out an event in the running community, whether it's a cancer organization. We do a lot of work with cancer organizations around the country, and walk and runs for various nonprofits. Last year, we were in New York, New Jersey, Florida, all over the place, Long Island, all over the place.
Very good. So, oh, Beck, you okay?
I was like trying to be all like clever, and then I'm like, what am I doing? Because I'm like, I have to jump.
You do. You have to take off.
I do.
Okay, Beck. We'll say good night.
I definitely want to come back.
Good night.
Now I really want to get back to Anchordown.
We love to see you, Becky. Thanks so much for all the time.
Yay, thank you. Okay, sorry.
Good night, Beck.
Bye, Beck.
All right. So, Jay, you think that you think right at this point your running is kind of done then, personally, for the most part, or the longer stuff is, you said, right?
Yeah, my longer stuff is. I'd like to think I could change that. I have and I don't know if any runners listening could relate, but I think, we always, all of us in ultra running hear that stat, like how many stay in it. And I was lucky enough to stay in it for a lot of years. I'm not biomechanically gifted. I pronate horribly.
Mhm.
And unfortunately, that pronation and running so long on that pronation and just, leaning on youth to recover every time
Mm.
added up. And now my arch is completely gone. So even with a 1 inch orthotic in my foot, basically propping me up uncomfortably, I still walk out of a 4 or 5 mile run with a swollen ankle and limping around for a day. So I found my sweet spot. I can go to the gym. I can go to Colt State Park and run 3 or 4 mile around the park. I can
Yeah.
run as fast as I want. But once I crack 20 miles a week, all of a sudden, playing in the yard with my son is painful, or mowing the lawn is painful. So
Mm.
I'm waiting on scientific intervention, or I joke that if I could just get, some sort of amputation of the ankle, I'd be better served. So uh, maybe I'll do that
I
someday. But
let us know how that works, and we'll have you back on. So, right?
deal.
I mean,
there are times at anchor down I'm willing to cut your feet off at the ankles. Just saying.
There you go. I see some synergy here.
Yeah. And Art, during the cut,
yes,
I'll cut your ankles too. Just so
there
you know.
you go. You gotta, you gotta get in line for that. So,
Well, Art, I'm going to put the cut on my list. I still dream of getting it back. I see a PT. I have a PT up in the Boston area that I drive an hour and a half to both ways once a month, who still works on it. And he still daydreams with me that he thinks there's someday I might. He's basically let me know that I have 100 in my lifetime left if I'm lucky enough to get it. So I have to choose wisely. So I will add the cut to that small list of events.
that would be awesome. That would, it wouldn't be a wasted choice. So, great. Well, Fred, do you have any closing arguments or any cross-examination?
Samuel P. Cole was a lawyer and a banker, turns out. He bought a bunch of old farms and made that fancy farm there in the early 1900s, died in 1921. And it wasn't made into a state park because of different kind of like wrangling and stuff until 1965.
Wow.
There you go.
Very cool.
Yeah. Hey, also, I wanted to ask you, Jay, my friend Greg Stone, he finished, I think, second in the 12-hour last summer, right? Is that?
Yeah, Greg Stone from Barrington.
Yeah, Greg Stone's a great guy. Yeah.
Yeah, he ran 100, I think, in our second year. He's part of the 100-mile club. He's a great guy. And he ran with his two sons this year, I think.
Oh, really? Okay. All right.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, great guy. And am I correct in that? Barrington, Rhode Island?
I thought he was from the Cape, but not sure.
I might be confusing because I think we've had two Stones. I might be confusing them.
Okay.
I'll look them up after this.
Isn't Barrington on the Cape, or do I have that wrong?
No, the Cape is in Massachusetts.
Okay. I thought that I always heard that as never. I thought I seem to hear that in my mind on the weather radio.
Oh, wait, you're talking Greg Stone. I'm sorry, Greg Stone.
Yes. Yeah. Great runner, about 59-ish, maybe.
Oh, of course. Yes. No, of course I know Greg. I'm making sure I got the right name to the face. Yeah, no, I joke with Greg because back in my final days at Lake Quinnipiac around the Lake 24, he was like somebody I looked up to 15 years ago when I would run because he was so consistent and he's got such like a flowing stride. And every single year I envy him as the injured runner I am because I watch Greg run now at Anchor Down. And I joked with him this year. I said, you run like you did 15 years ago. It's the same light touch that you did, damn it, 15 years ago.
Yeah, he barely touches the ground. I know. He's put up over 50 miles in the Rhode Island 6-hour at least once. And he's won the Frozen Fat Ass out on the Cape like 4 times. He's just quick. He's a quick runner.
I remember that. I was at that year at the Rhode Island 6-hour, and it was him and Martin Ty.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that was amazing to watch.
To me, that they rolled up, 50 miles in a little local 6-hour was pretty
right.
Cool.
And they were shoulder to shoulder a lot of the time. It was just incredible to watch. Yeah.
Yeah, bastard.
Very good.
Well, this was fun, guys. I really
Yeah,
appreciate it.
Yeah, terrific.
Yeah.
Jay, glad to have you on. Celeste, you have any closing arguments there?
No, I'll see you in August.
There you go. All right. Well, listen, Jay, thanks a lot. We will, be keeping in touch, and hopefully maybe do some more reporting around, around race day, maybe before or after, something like that.
We love that, and if you have Anchor Down people listening that dream of it, I would like everybody to know. Feel free to reach out. Our goal is to keep it hard to get into, hard to achieve your dreams at, but possible. And I want everybody to be able to get to the starting line if they choose to. So our goal is to just keep it that way. So if somebody's out there dreaming of getting into it, don't be scared of what we talked about or the qualification standard. Please reach out to somebody that you know that's done it, or look at the qualification standards, and we'd love to see you get there and succeed at it, because it's an unbelievable community.
It's really
very good.
Nice.
Okay, well, to all of our listeners out there, if you've made it this far, definitely seek professional help, and we will see you all in a mile
and a half.
All right. Very good. What's going on? It's like it's like we're going to take a picture now. I'm not thinking like we're going to take a picture on this top of this mountain, and God, I hope nobody does like a handstand or a headstand on these jagged rocks.
Well, who would think to do that?
Was it a handstand or a headstand?
I don't know. I didn't even know it happened. How do I know, Beck?
I don't know. True.
Give me a break, for Christmas sake.
That was a pretty epic aid station, though.
That was fun.
That was
I've watched
fun.
that video of Rob hitting the cup out of your hand like 5 times. It's really funny.
Oh, it is.
So did I.
Hey,
Your
Fred.
facial
Unfortunately, I
expression-
was going to the bathroom behind a tree when that all happened. So
I never peed behind trees.
what did you say?
Fred, can
I
you
never
hear us?
Yes.
Where's
Yes, I can.
Hi, Fred.
Hey, what's going on?
Hey, did you shave, or is it that you don't usually have a
He always
usually
has
have
a
a
hat
hat
on.
on?
Because they have a hat
Yeah.
on. Look, it's like it's reflecting off my head now. It's sort of like a halo.
Because
because
everything reflects off of me.
I'm kind of
'Cause you're an
angelic.
angel.
Yeah.
You are.
There you go. Like that.
I don't mind not having a hat, but when you have headphones and no hat, it's just weird.
Now it's kind of like a solar eclipse. Look.
Oh yeah. So has anybody like, okay, so tonight is going to be 276, right?
277.
Is it?
Because
because you were
276
Because the other two, because there were two.
Yeah.
Okay.
There was
Thanks
that
for last
sitcom,
year.
wasn't there? The sitcom 277? No,
No. I don't
Room
think
the
so.
sitcom in the
222?
80s.
That wasn't a sitcom though.
Oh, you got to look
Okay.
it up. Sitcom 80s.
Okay, so we think it's episode 277. Is that
Well,
right?
I said it was 276 with Laura, so I could have been wrong.
No, because it was 275 and we did the
Yeah,
Patreon.
so this is 277.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, it's 227. That's what it is.
Oh,
227. 227.
room 222, I thought it was.
That was in the 70s.
80s. 85 to 90.
No, room 222 is the 70s.
Oh, okay.
Is that the room from The Shining?
No.
That's 97, I think.
It was like a rookie teacher at some school.
Oh, I don't.
No, did you ever do Anchor Down or no?
No.
I
I was
did.
going to do it because one of my friends lived in Bristol, Rhode Island, and I wanted to go out and visit him when it was brand new. And then I found
Okay.
out he was dead. So I didn't go.
Wait, what?
It's true. It's a true story.
That's a pretty good excuse.
Oh my gosh.
There's this lawyer who was a friend of mine. We used to work together, and then he lived in Bristol. And we used to we were Facebook friends, and we would greet each other, on our birthdays and stuff.
And you're like, hey, I'm coming to visit you. And he's like, no, you're not.
So one year I went to go.
Then you were talking to him.
Wish him happy birthday. And I looked at his Facebook page, and it was like, dude, I wish I could have one more beer with you at blah, blah, blah in Bristol, your regular bar, but, you passed into the ether or something. And I was like, oh, Mike's dead. Huh.
I mean, you could have technically visited.
Like he's dead. Like you were talking to him and you said, man, you're fucking quiet tonight. What's with you?
Really.
And then he's like,
why aren't you answering your door?
Like, come on, man. You just seem a little bit.
Weekend at Mike's. Right. Yeah.
Kind of. He's awful. I had that happen once. We were out canoeing in the out across the pond and that's not a euphemism for England or anything like that. And we found this fawn, this baby fawn.
Aww.
And it was separated from its mom, and it was all icy and snowy, and it just looked like it was in big trouble. So we brought it back and put it under warm blankets, and we're taking care of it. And my friend Benny and then I came back in, and he goes, he's doing better. He's been so quiet.
Oh no.
Bambi is really quiet, really taking a nap.
That's how the deer died.
I have information about that, by the way.
Oh, Becky, you find joy in this. I'm glad I said something. I'm glad that my sorrow entertains you. Hey guys,
when you find a fawn and it's separated from its mother, you should leave it there. Because the mother is going to come back. The mother comes back. They leave them alone.
So during the cut, we found an albino deer. Like it was all white.
Oh, that's cool.
And it was a baby one. And it on Bluffhead.
Hey.
And I didn't
do we have to let someone in?
Wahoo?
Art was like, hey, and then I'm like, wait, is he trying to tell us we have to let somebody in?
No, I'm just no, you're right.
Was it like a golden retriever or something, Celeste, and you were just hallucinating, or was it really?
No, because everybody else saw it. It wasn't, and I have pictures. Like I got a picture, so I have proof.
All right. Okay.
Hey, Jason's here.
Hello everyone. It's a me Cultra bot I am here to let you know about our excellent Patreons who help support the show. Support is good. Wir are 112% listener supported. If you are not a patron, besure to tank wo next the museum here we go road to 100 show support 100 happy hour. What the set means to you. Dollar. Albert James Galatan a Markus Emi Jennifer Hanlong Emi Jennifer Hanlons Friend Emi Morage Group Champion Power Emi Sorense Anditit Angela Rose Anna G. Sevume vis Energy Antoni de Bettencourt Austin Frank Asampulatov Ben Naletti Ben Woen Benjamin Griffin Bergs Hiri Trailheads Bessic Husle Bikini Chicke Bill Gibseme vis Golden Hans Bill Gilpatrick Bill Odedal sin ab Vorlag war amu genau bevor its do late Breie Musiak Pris Henneli Celeste Fond. Keri Bilbi Schokolateli Oatmeal Reisin Chip Chris Rosol Christina Kinhin Christopher Kohleglow Wer has stops nobody knows. Clement Sentet Kungs. Chloris Reinhard Kratschli de Brehand Brave Hart MR Fredom David Huppel David Heid David Kaplan Elle Cretella Conel Eli Pellegrino Like Afi Vini Withutze Alkohol Emily Meer Enrique Tello. Erik Weste Franklin Gandiaga Fred Wils Fuck Arbis Jeffrey Miller Heidi Stearns J. Durant Is Not A Von Hit Wonders New and Improvechek Von Eismis and Wessong Jacques Sarbach Jake Cote Jamie Mailer Young Jessica Krandal Jilian LFC Josef NC Amazing Technicaler Trail Scherz Josef Morisrö Just _Ploder Not A Otter. Weit de aktuali Kult bi an Otter. Huknos Justin Koski Getting Ready for the CUT Kare Prado or Karin Pledo Kelsey Eng is a Action Verblanzolot Laura Ricci Laura Edelmann Lodog Li Anizarger Lenis mum Gott it Babylitz. Vitius 30 Macie Macho Marti Ducho Mat Nilse Report Michael Keo Michael Lopresti Lub Michele Pompom O'Neill Mikroskopik Porcopine Megreardon KG Miles Victors Force Vin Mumi Kretscheri Manki Stuffer Name Netzilski Nicole Cash and Kari Peter Keo Powerade bei Pop Tarts Rebecca Gonzales Kriesberg Richard Rans Trails o YouTube Finis Hestraveler 100 Rob Seber as Breckerice Ron Locandro. Ros Bilak Rufus and Branda Chefi Fortin Chefi Chocolati Chikeran Sevit et Midnik Drusti Red Vagin Samuel Dybdahl Sandy Bartel Sarah Poris Scott Schonse Simon C. Echet Slurpy Runnerstab Endurance Steve Estremeras Extreme Esaterema Titen Jung Miles. Get Some Willi Supplis Last. Se Blue Hills Kontingent se Lazarus Krutum Starodai Toni Bonanno Toni Dei Domizio Tunxis Chemi MC Kasker Ultra Woker Waldhammer William Aeuro Kepruningbro o YouTube Aeuro Jara Zmitzmikok Desitinsrear Thank you again for your support Bibi.